pressure on this. It isn't a quiz. It's very informal. I'll make sure you do get your pasties. Yeah. I'll make sure they go in a minute. But to save me talking myself to death, because like I said, a lot of this I covered on Monday. The first part of this is, what is hate crime? Now, people that come here, can anybody just give me a finger, but not the finger, and can somebody explain what they feel is hate crime? What do you think hate crime really is?
Well, we're in Bolton, can we all know the statistics, don't we?
Right, okay.
Where do we start? Knife crime, some racial hate.
Yeah.
You know,
yeah.
statistics are high. I mean, personally, this leaflet and yourself and a few others should be hitting schools.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah. What types of hate crime are there? You just said there's racial hate.
Yeah, it's a big one.
What the hate crime is that?
Disability.
That's a fantastic one. That is a fantastic one. What other hate crime is there?
I'd say what happened to Sophie Lancaster, that was a massive.
Sophie Lancaster. Can you explain Sophie Lancaster for people who don't know?
Sophie Lancaster was a young girl who was a bit of a, nosher, and she looked at how she dressed, how she looked, and she was beautiful. And unfortunately, her and her partner were in the park, and they was attacked by a load of youths, and they were purely attacked because of how they looked and how they dressed. Unfortunately, Sophie lost her life. Bob survived.
Yeah, and I don't know if.
There is a documentary based on her life.
Yeah, it was a very, very hard profile.
Did she die? Suicide, or was she?
No, she was attacked.
She was attacked,
yeah.
By these people, yeah.
Yeah.
Where were they?
She was.
This was in Bearcut.
In Bearcut?
She was dressed in all the indie type stuff, goth type stuff, and she was attacked on the park, which was a very, very high profile incident. But talking about high profile incident, there's one that's in the news at the moment. Can anybody remember that one? The one in the, what's that? That's right, Rihanna. Can you
It's my friends.
could you show that to the camera? Yeah, because that's a young girl in question who was attacked.
Her sister comes from Everton.
Right, okay.
Yeah, it's very close to us.
Right. That's too close.
Got to say that.
Right, okay. That's the thing. Now, who was the person who mentioned Rihanna? Yeah. Could you explain what happened to Rihanna? Do you know enough about it?
She was just bullied for being transgender.
Okay.
And they really bullied her till eventually they killed her in park. Stabbed her about 20 times.
Well,
Just because she was herself, Yeah.
It happens, it does, this sort of things has happened.
It's terrible.
To transgenders.
Bullying and things, when lives are lost, we know that we're failing in the system when we can't, as parents or clubs or specific groups, they can't control it, and it gets out of control, and then members of them parties.
But it's not through people trying, is it? We're all trying.
Yeah, but still, obviously, we're not trying enough. My son was only attacked the other week in a school which I thought was safe by a particular free.
Why with your son? I'm just trying to gauge, just by the people that are in the room, how you see hate crime and how you would try to change the way things are. Now, you spoke about one specific thing. Now, in the time that we spent here, we've talked about sexual, religion, disabilities. We talked about so many different ways that hate crime is affecting victims in this country. So you just touched on asylum seekers and refugees. Could I ask, if you could change something, what would you do? What would be the thing?
For me, it's the education. It starts, I'm sure schools are doing their best with, British values and reinforcing that, and getting sometimes some schools they even get parents to educate them. You're like children groups and whatever, if we all work together towards that same value, is to educate, to accept each other with our differences.
And that's what makes society.
And that's what will change with education. It may take time, but at least we are driving same way.
I know that it was, like I said, this session is the second session. We had a session on Monday. A very interesting point that was made on a Monday, and that the young people who have certain opinions, let's say, right, getting them opinions from the parents or from the guardians, and then they're going out and they're regurgitating what they've heard.
That's what I said, Charles.
Yeah, that's sorry. Yeah, so I don't want to steal your thunder.
No,
If you, I was going to take the credit. I thought it was
Okay, hate crime in and of itself is not an actual crime. So like I've said with burglary, it's all legislated under what crime acts was passed in law. When it comes to hate crime, you need someone to have actually committed a crime to begin with for them to then prosecute as a hate crime, their motive. So for instance, you need to assault someone, public disorder, burglary, whatever it is. If that was motivated against a hatred of that individual based on their ethnicity, race, religion, sex, then when it was come to magistrates of the Crown Court and if you were found guilty, the judge then can increase the sentence significantly and say this was motivated by a hate crime, therefore I'm increasing it by an extra year, 6 months, whatever the legislation is based on that crime that was committed. So if anyone's ever reported hate crime and struggled to get it to go anywhere, the police generally don't tell you, well, the reason why is because a crime's not actually occurred here. So for things like public disorder, where they might have used racism, it's very difficult to get it to the magistrates, because if you ever looked at the crime stats, you'll find that most people, which the crime stats aren't public by the way, I think it's been 5 years since Great Manchester Police published the crime statistics. I've managed to get them by badgering the Chief Inspector of Bolton and that. And the crime resolve rates are around about 2%, 5% about what crime it is. And then you've got officers who are dealing with caseloads of 20 to 30 cases at a time. So when they're trying to do a burglary, they might be trying to deal with a hate crime, but the officer doesn't have the time to do it. So for the last 5 years, a lot of officers have gone to Lancashire. So it's meant that we don't have the officers. So if you see a lot of officers, you'll find they're 20 years old and they don't know the law. And it's usually because they don't even have sergeants who are that old and that experienced to teach them how to handle their cases. So when they get a case regarding hate crime or public disorder and there's been racism and that kind of thing, they'll say, oh, just write a diary. And they'll hope to fob you off and it'll never go anywhere. And then they'll say, oh, you need to keep a diary so we can take it to the magistrates. And it could be 2 years if you're keeping a diary of someone being racist, sexist, whatever it is towards you, and it'll never progress. But there are certain ways you can progress the case, and the ways that always work, and the way I did it, is you publicly embarrass the police. And that means getting attention by speaking to your counsellor, speaking to an MP. It means that when you report a crime, within about 48 hours, you can actually ring 101. You can say to them, I reported this crime, and if you do it online, you only get a reference number, not a crime reference number. So that's really important as a difference. If you get the PDF, it's just a reference number, it means nothing really. Even the officers can't find it half the time. A crime reference number is the important information. And they'll only register in the last 5 years they got done. Because they were basically like, oh yeah, burglary, oh yeah, we can't really do anything. They weren't even reporting it. There's no reporting of burglaries whatsoever. But the new inspector, chief officer came in and he changed all that and he's doing quite well. But once you ring 101 within 48 hours, you can then ask them, can I have the name of the officer who's actually handling my case? And they'll give you a 5-digit number, like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Once you have that, you can say to them, can you leave a note on the officer's case file so when he's in? Because they're working different shifts, it could be like 8 till whatever time, 3 different shift patterns per whatever department they're on. And also that number, if you put at gmp.police.uk, you can contact them directly. So they don't have an excuse as to why they've not got back to you. And you can badger them. Ideally, I've spoken to officers and they've said, well, really, 28 days we should be given. But they can still send an email. It takes 2 minutes just to let you know, I'm aware of your case, I'm trying to deal with it, but I do have these other cases. All it takes is them being honest with you and saying, it's taking time to deal with this. A lot of the time they won't do that. There's been a handful of officers I found who've been open and honest, and I'm always like, yeah, I'll give you leeway, you can take a month of this, it's okay, I understand, you'll be open with me. A lot of them will lie to your face, and people don't know how to pursue that and take it forward. But there's, for instance, if you don't feel that the police have handled your case properly, you can do a complaint. that complaint will force a sergeant or an inspector to actually look into your case and make sure that it was handled properly in the first place. A lot of the time they'll just say, yeah, it was handled properly, no further action. But if they had a crime where they had a suspect, they interview the suspect, then there's a victim's right to, I forgot the term for it, but it's come in last year, where you can take to a victim's right to like complain kind of thing. I've got the correct term in the bag. And that'll force the department to do a proper investigation regarding what's occurred and what evidence and why it was no further action or what action was taken, and that'll give you a full investigation into it. You can even complain to Andy Burnham, who's the GMO, and then they'll take it to Charles Wazoo, something like that's called, and then it kicks off at a higher level. The thing is, they don't like the higher levels coming down at lower levels. And it's all about attention. If you want someone to progress, kick off. That's the only way it's going to progress.
Well, I think that's the...
Often we see people who have even what we might consider to be relatively low-level crime or even trivial, but the effect that it has on the victim can be devastating.
My first experience with hate crimes was as a victim. I myself am transgender, so when I was in school, I was female. I came out first as being gay and got a little bit of abuse because of that, and I almost didn't want to come out as transgender. I've had rocks thrown at my face, I've been beat up outside of pubs for the toilets I've been in, and it almost made me go into my shell a little bit. And when I first came out, I felt really, really confident, really, this is who I am, I'm allowed to be who I am now. Then once I'd experienced the abuse, it sort of made me shrink back in a little bit.
We look for a hostility, a motivation and a prejudice towards what are known as protected characteristics. Now those protected characteristics are race, transgender, disability, religion and faith, and sexual orientation, and they can be broken down further.
Family member of someone, so when that helps there, it's good. And as long as the teams are good enough, and it's not all voluntary service and they get some support from the gov, then it will work. And then at the minute,
I've seen so many people who have been either witnesses of hate crime or been involved in it and tried to take the law into their own hands, and they often just spirals out of control. And I think the big message and the message in the leaflets that we provided is that keep yourself safe and not to confront people, because you're then putting yourself at risk and you're putting giving a chance of certain things escalating. You've got to be able to assess a certain thing and keep yourself safe, because sometimes I've seen it so many times, people will step into something and then they'll get stabbed or something, or it just a brick goes through a window or whatever, and you could just be a bystander. So it's very hard, and it's, the way I see it now, especially with this thing now that I didn't know about the hate crime thing. So for example, something happens on the street and you step into that, you see it from you're coming out of your house and you see something and you're coming out, and then next thing you know there's a brick go through the window because you've intervened or whatever.
the heroes.
It is, like I say, I'm 57 years old and I did not know that. And I'm doing this project and I'm thinking I should know that. And really and truly, it is dodgy ground. And especially in this day and age, which we talk about, knife crime.